Welcome to online classes. Today I am going to teach you a lesson of class 10, A Triumph of Surgery. Let me introduce you with characters in the story. Tricky, the pet dog, Mrs. Pumphrey, mistress of Tricky, James Harrier, the narrator and veterinary surgeon. Introduction to the lesson. Tricky, a small dog, is pampered and overfed by his rich mistress. In this story, there's a dog who is pampered. Pampered means who has been given excess love. Overfed, who is fed beyond limits, due to which he falls seriously ill, and his mistress consults a veterinary surgeon. Veterinary surgeon means a doctor who treats animals. Does he perform an operation? Does the dog recover? You will be able to discover the answers of these two questions at the end. Let's start the story. A Triumph of Surgery. I was really worried about Tricky this time. I here refers to narrator. He's very worried about Tricky. I had pulled up, stopped my car. The narrator stopped his car when he saw him in the street with his mistress, and I was shocked at his appearance. When doctor saw the appearance of the Tricky, he became shocked because he had become hugely fat. He has become very much fat, like a blotted sausage. Blotted, swollen. Sausage, meat with the leg at each corner. He has become so much fat that he looked like a swollen meat with four legs at each corner. His eyes bloodshot. Bloodshot means red. Roomy. Roomy means watery. His eyes had become red and watery. Stared straight ahead. All the time, he used to keep looking at a particular place with fixed eyes, and his tongue lolled, means hung, from his jaws. He always used to keep his tongue hang. Mr. Harriet, Mrs. Pumphrey hastened to explain. He was so listless. Listless means careless. Mr. Harriet, he seemed to have no energy. I thought he must be suffering from malnutrition, means lack of good diet. Now, Mrs. Pumphrey explained to Mr. Harriet very quickly that due to lack of a good diet, his dog, Tricky, seemed to lost energy. So I have been giving him some little extra between meals to build him up. Build him up means to build his physical strength. Now she has started giving him extra foods besides the normal meals. Some malt means barley, cod liver oil, fish oil, and a bowl of Horlicks she used to give at night to make him sleep so that he could have a good sound sleep. Nothing much really. She also added that besides these things, apart from these things, she is giving nothing to him. And did you cut down on the sweet things as I told you? To which the narrator asked her, have you started cut down the sweets? Cut down means reduce the sweet things as I had told you, misadvised you. Oh, I did for a bit. To which she responded that little bit, not much. But he seemed to be so weak, I had to relent, means avoid. He does love cream cakes and chocolates, so I can't bear to refuse him. Now she gives two reasons. One, the dog has become so weak that she could not avoid giving him all these things. He does love cream cakes and chocolates, so I can't bear to refuse him. Second reason is because cream cakes and chocolates are the favorite things of Tricky. That's why she could not say no to him for these things. I looked down again at the little door. I, the narrator, again looked at the little dog. That was the trouble. Now he understood the problem. Tricky's only fault was greedy. The main problem of the Tricky was that he was greedy. He had never been known to refuse food. He never said no to food. He would tackle a meal at any hour of the day or night. He was able to manage food at any time of the day. And I wondered about all the things Mrs. Pumphrey hadn't mentioned. And I was afraid there are many more things that Mrs. Pumphrey had not mentioned in the list of food that she was providing to him. Are you giving him plenty of exercise? Plenty of exercise. Are you giving him exercise? Well, he has little walks with me, as you can see. But Hodgkin is here, the gardener, has been down with lumbago. Lumbago is a disease, lower back pain. So there has been no ring throwing lately. Lately means recently. Now she gave excuses that her gardener Hodgkin was down with lumbago. He was suffering from a disease of lower back pain. That's why there was no one to play ring throwing with him these days. I try to sound severe. Severe means strict. Now I try to be very strict with Mrs. Pumphrey. Now I really mean this because I mean this. If you don't cut his food right down and give him more exercise, he's going to be really ill. Now he warns him that if she is not going to reduce food and increase exercise, then Tricky will get seriously ill. You must harden your heart and keep him on a very strict diet, and suggested him to stay hard and keep him on a very strict diet. Don't get emotional and put him on a strict diet. Mrs. Pumphrey wrung her hands. Wrung meant twisted her hands. Oh, I will, and assures the narrator that definitely she will follow it. I am sure you are right, but it's so difficult, so very difficult. She responded that whatever the doctor was saying was right, but at the same time, it was very difficult for her to do this. She set off head down along the road as if she determined to put the new regime into practice immediately. Now she set off. Set off means left that place. Head down along the road. Now, doing her head down, she's walking along the road as if determined. Determined means fixed mind. Made up her mind to put the new regime. Regime means new law into practice immediately after listening to the advice of doctor. I watched her progress with growing concern. The progress with growing concern means now the lady was going to be very worried about the Tricky. It was visible. Tricky was tottering along. What do you mean by tottering? Tottering here means to walk with heavy steps. Along in the tweed coat means woolen coat. He had a whole wardrobe of these coats for the cold weather and a raincoat for the wet days. Tricky had a separate wardrobe of a variety of coats, woolen coats, raincoats. He struggled on. Now he had to struggle very hard to walk on. Trooping in, his bending in his harness. Harness is a strap that he was having around his neck, due to which he was walking very heavily. I thought it wouldn't be long before I heard from Mrs. Pumphrey, and I was sure soon he was going to get a call from Mrs. Pumphrey. The expected call came within a few days, and what he expected came true. Mrs. Pumphrey was distraught. Distraught means sad. Tricky would eat nothing, refused even his favorite dishes, and besides, Besides means in addition to it, he had bouts of vomiting, means intense actions of vomiting. He spent all his time lying on a rug. Rug means a worn out cloth. Panting means breathing heavily. Now she complains to this doctor that for the last few days, Tricky would eat nothing. He has stopped eating anything. He stopped even taking his favorite dishes. In addition to it, he has started vomiting frequently. He spent all his time lying on a rug. All the time, he keeps lying on the carpet and with taking heavy breathing. Didn't want to go for walks. Even he don't like to go for walks. Didn't want to do anything. I had my plans in advance. After listening thing, I was very clear in my mind because in advance I had already made plans how to treat Tricky. The only way was to get Tricky out of the house for a period. There was only one option. If I wanted to treat Tricky, that was to take him out of the house for a period. I suggested that he be hospitalized for about a fortnight. Fortnight means for 15 days to be kept under observation. So I suggested Pumphrey that I want Tricky to be hospitalized at least for 15 days to keep under my observation. The poor lady almost swooned. Swooned means fainted. The poor lady was about to faint. She was sure he would pine and die if he did not see her every day. Mrs. Pumphrey was sure that if Tricky would not see her, then he would get upset and die. But I took a firm line. But the narrator took a final decision. Tricky was very ill, and this was the only way to see him. Being a doctor, he was sure that this is the only way to save his life. In fact, I thought it best to take him without delay. He thought that he should take immediate effect before it gets too late. And followed by Mrs. Pumphrey's wailings, I marched out to the car carrying the little dog wrapped in a blanket. I marched out. I rushed. I ran out to the car carrying the little dog wrapped in a blanket. Wrapped means covered. I took the Tricky in my arms, completely covered with blanket, and Mrs. Pumphrey followed me. The entire staff was roused. Roused means woke up, and maids rushed in and out, bringing his day bed, night bed, favorite cushions, toys, rubber rings, breakfast bowl, lunch bowl, super bowl. Realizing that my car would never hold all the stuffs, I started to drive away. Now all the maids and servants started running in and out to bring belongings of the Tricky, like day bed, night bed, his favorite cushions, his toys, rubber rings with them he used to play, breakfast ball, lunch balls, super balls, realizing that. But when I realized that my car would not fit all these kinds of stuffs, I started to drive away. But as I moved off, I started to leave from there. Mrs. Pumphrey, with a despairing cry, with a sad cry, threw an armful of the little coats through the window. She threw the coats that she was having in her arms through the window in my car. I looked in the mirror before I turned the corner of the drive. When I reached at the corner of the street, I looked through the mirror. Everybody was in tears. Everybody was crying out on the road, there on the road. I glanced down. I glanced means I looked down at the pathetic little animal, pitiful little animal, sorrowful little animal, gasping, heaving, breathing very heavily on the seat by my side. He was sitting by my seat and It was a pitiful little animal. It was breathing very heavily. I patted, I gently touched the head, and Tricky made a brave effort to wag. Wag means wave, move. His tail. Poor old lad, poor old fellow. He felt sorrow for this poor creature. You haven't a kick in you. You haven't a kick means energy. You don't have energy in you. I know it very much, but I think I know a cure for you. But the narrator also realized that being a doctor, I knew how I can cure you. Rest of the chapter will be explained in next video. Keep watching. Thank you.